Hi everybody, two announcements. One, my new shirts have just dropped. Support Red-Headed Bladesmiths. You can pick them up in the link down below. Every dollar you spend toward the purchase of one of my new shirts, which either come in a wonderful V-neck or a crew cut, gets you an entry to this. Knife giveaway number 9. This is a great size blade for everyday carry. The blade is hand-forged 1075 high carbon steel. The spacer is white-tailed deer antler that's been stabilized and carved, and the handle is stabilized white oak that's also been carved. But our limit you see here is all done by me, so if you want a chance to make this yours, this is the time to go for it. These shirts are wonderful, they're 100% cotton. This is not just cheap like my iron-on shirts, these are actually really good quality, they're very durable. And you don't have to worry about international shipping. My distribution team has locations in pretty much every continent but Antarctica, so you're going to pay next to nothing for your shipping, whereas traditionally you'd be paying like, $15, $20 just for shipping to get the item there. You don't have to do that anymore. Shipping is not more than $3 to $5. So get down there, ditch a shirt, and support your favorite red-headed bladesmith. Hi, welcome back to the channel. I know this is a little different format than you're used to, especially being here in my studio slash office instead of out in the shop. But I want to take a second to explain to you what you're about to be seeing today in this video. This is Bloomsteel, from the gathering of the ore, the iron ore, all the way to the finished blade. I've not shown this process in its entirety on any social media platform ever. So I really hope you all enjoy what I'm about to show to you. I'm going to explain everything along the way. If you do have any comments, please feel free to leave them down below and I will address them as soon as I possibly can. So get some popcorn ready, get a good drink, and let's get into this. So I'm going to make steel, and I'm going to make a knife from that steel. But before I can make steel, I have to find iron. I am very lucky to have my own personal stream, and the glaciers during the last ice age decided to drop a whole bunch of iron-bearing material here. It's always wonderful to walk and just enjoy nature, but there's just a lot of stuff that comes from my own land that I get to incorporate into my own blades. I'm definitely in limestone country there. While there's not a lot of iron in the natural streams, you can always find it. If you look, you can see fossils everywhere too that have come up from the limestone when this was all just a giant inland sea. But more recently, I use a magnet and I locate these wonderful items. Yep, definitely iron. It's not very good iron, much like the Germanic ancestors had, but that just makes it more historically accurate, right? So one of the important things about building a smelter is you have to have clay-laden soil. Without clay, it's not gonna hold. You couldn't see it, but I mixed dried grass with the clay, and I'm just using it to make a floor, and I'm going to just kind of fill in the seams in the fire brick. A lot of people won't just use fire brick, they'll make this massively thick smelter, and I've just found that's just simply not needed. I know your Facebook groups are probably going to disagree with you. It's definitely been one of the easiest ways I've found to make a good quality steel bloom. Before I start adding charges of charcoal and my iron, I have to fire it first just to make sure it has a good bit of heat ready to go. Now this is just a small piece of it. Clearly I can't use that whole gigantic thing at one time. And even this is too big a fit to my forge, so I'm cutting this top off for 2 reasons. 1, to show you that, yes, this is not a rock, and that it actually is steel. But 2, and yes, like usual, I'm doing it by hand. I am going to use a few modern conveniences on this, but I really wanted to make something as close to continual hand power and, handmade as I could. So, I'm foregoing a lot of the power tools whenever I can, but I do use them sometimes. Now, one of the neat things is most of that scale that you see going off is not like your traditional scale from forging with modern steel. This is a really good carbon source and there's a lot of iron in it, so this can go right back in the smelter. Some of the bigger chunks that come off that just won't fuse other chunks of iron, things like that, like this big piece right here, they're gonna get saved. I'm gonna consolidate all of that into the pieces I need to make the fittings. This is going to be folded and made into the actual blade itself. I always like to get it into a big pancake first. This lets me see areas inside that might not be fully forged welded together. You can usually tell by just the difference of color, but this is really good steel. It's pretty darn solid. The slagginess that comes off of most Bloomsteel is usually flux enough, but this was really good. There wasn't a whole lot of impurities, so that's why I went ahead and took the time to clean it, and I just cut it and stack it. A lot of people ask why I use stainless steel hose clamps instead of welding or using iron wire. I love using the hose clamps because they will not forge well to my item underneath a normal forging atmosphere. So you have to have a really special atmosphere to make stainless steel weld. So I don't have to worry about it sticking. Yes, with modern welding it would stick and it wouldn't work, but then that's just even more I have to grind away, or that might be a potential addition to the steel, and I don't want that. I don't like using iron wire because, I'm human. If I mess with my hammer, I hit the iron wire, well then that gets forged welded to my item, and that's just one more thing it's included in. So I'm really trying to keep the item, all the steel here as the steel that I want it to be. And plus, anytime I use electricity, I always view it as a tiny failure on my part. I feel guilty. This is just for me personally. Use all the power tools you want. Everybody, the reason why people do this is different for everybody. For me, the journey is more important than the finished product most of the time. I'm doing this to intentionally have to suffer a little bit. It's kind of, it has to hurt a little bit. It can't be easy all the time. I quite enjoy. It's just like, going to the gym. People go there and they just work themselves to pieces. You don't have to. People do it because they like it. They like the struggle. I kind of like the struggle. Now these are all the excess good pieces that have fallen off, and I'm gonna forge all them back up into their own bar with a few other bits I have, and that'll become the bar for the fittings. Now you can see here, this is like 99.9% together with a tiny little inclusion, but considering this is a handmade steel, it's not an issue whatsoever. This stuff is solid. It's gonna be fine. I always like to cut my ends off just because that if there is going to be a delamination of any kind, it's always going to come from your ends. Modern steel, pattern welded steel, anything. Just save yourself time, cut your ends off. Keep everything nice and square. That's just a little tip from my 22 years of knowledge onto a lot of you new folk. And yeah, I'm still showing you to the camera. I don't know why. At this point, there is no, a lot of people ask, how many times do you have to fold the steel? There is no universal answer. The steel tells you when it's done. Now I can just tell by my hammer blows that, I can tell where I did it, and I can tell by looking at it. This is solid. This doesn't have to be folded anymore. The bloom was already so good from the beginning that just doing that, flattening it out, condensing, and then just stacking up those 3 layers and forging this together, this stuff is solid. The more you fold, you lose a lot of carbon, so you got to put carbon back into it. This steel is taking my hammer blows. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're not hitting it hard enough. You don't even know what you're seeing. If your hand was under this, you wouldn't have a hand. That comes from my experience and me learning how to throw a hammer properly. But yeah, this steel is very good, very stout. When you first start forging bloom, it's quite amazing. It forges more like a sponge. The more you refine it, then it gets closer and closer to modern steel, and you gotta start using flux more, or being very careful about your atmosphere. But like at this point, this is just forging like modern steel. Some bloom bar, normally I have to do, I usually have to do like 6 or 12 layers or 6 or 12 folds. It just depends. Like I said, this right here, this steel would have been a prize back in the day. One important thing about Bloomsteel, no matter how good it is, you never want to forge too much too quickly. You can take it under a power hammer and draw it out, but that is definitely risky. You do run a lot more chance of things going wrong just because this bar didn't come from a factory. While I know, there's carbon and iron in it, I don't really know what other chemicals. What was in the charcoal that I used? What water flowed by that tree? What did it absorb? What was mixed in with the raw ore that the glaciers dropped down? You can think you know everything, and you never know. You might get a random element, and that's just going to just destroy everything. And being near my shop, what if some brass or copper flakes accidentally flew from inside and landed in? I assure you, it would drastically affect this. So you never fully quite know what all you're working with, which is why usually it's best to take a small sample of what you're after you get a decent bar. Take a small sample of it, make it flat, heat treat it, see if you can break it, see what you can do with it. I definitely just went full hog into this because I had faith in it, and thankfully that turned out to be right. But normally, you do wanna test your metals. If you're rich, you can just send it off to a lab and have a mass spec on it, and know exactly what's in there. Most months I'm still ramen budget, so. Once I get things forged, I like to leave them on the anvil so I can watch them cool to see if there are any pockets that aren't forge welded, and this piece is very solid. Few minor inclusions, but not really that big of a deal. in the modern day, everybody is just so focused on flawless forge welds, which I find to be hilarious. There is not a single blade from the archaeological record that is not at least 25% forge welding flaws. How do I know? I'm one of those wonderful archaeologist people. I've seen the X-rays. I've done excavations. I've gotten to enjoy the perks of being in a museum back room. But more importantly, there's papers all over the place. There's X-rays. A tiny, like the one guy scrapped an entire sword just because it had a tiny weld flaw in the middle. And was like, that is not an issue. It really isn't. But you have all these TikTok and Facebook smithing charlatans that they'll tell you whatever you want to hear, just like the lies about Damascus steel, how it came from a special mine in Damascus, or they've lost the formula. It's never been lost. It was never came from a specific mine. You have all these quote-unquote internet experts who have never opened a book in their entire life, trying to educate people, and they're basically just lying to everybody, trying to get their videos shared. So, yeah, be careful what you see. Don't even believe me. Don't believe anybody until you do your own research. I mean, like, real research, like academia.edu, JSTOR, books. Most people don't know what that is. A book is kind of like an internet article, but printed out, so you can open it up. And you can pretty easily tell what books contain real knowledge and which ones are like, ancient aliens, History Channel level stuff. Using a file. This is definitely a skill most people do not have. They rush to the grinder so quickly. With steel this precious, I don't care how long you've been doing it, you do not want to screw up. Yeah, I know it's an old rusty file, but, it still works. Who cares? Getting this filed down, sanded, and ready for etch, I think this took me like 10 hours. If you put so much work into it, what's 10 hours? That's a work day. Turn on your phone, open up Netflix, just start watching Breaking Bad or something. I usually watch Breaking Bad or Sons of Anarchy or, just a show, while I work. Or I listen to some audiobooks while I was working on this. I believe I had Seamus Haney's Beowulf playing in the background, which was very fitting. But anybody can get good with the grinder, but it's important to know these manual skills. I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it's how quickly the things we take for granted can go away. Well, like what the power grid went away and didn't come back. Could you still do your craft? Does your talent disappear with electricity? If it does, and is it really your talent? Are these skills yours, or are they just because, electricity gave you this tool that did most of the work for you? Every once in a while, it's good to go back to the old manual settings. Sometimes you gotta throw the calculator away and do long division. Skip the grinder one day. Use a file. It was a beautiful day outside. There are worse ways to spend a day. I know everyone is always asks, like, you need to secure your anvils and all your vices. I am way too, antsy, scatterbrained, a little crazy. I don't like things in one position forever. Like this, I want to be able to, it was a nice day, so I want to sit next to the entrance of my shop, so I moved everything over. I like having myself mobile. And I care a lot about my filming, so I need to be able to move my anvil or my forge if the light is better in one spot compared to another. So, that does matter to me. Yeah, I trade off on a little bit of functionality with the moving, but it clearly doesn't bother me because I keep doing it. And ultimately, that's what it's about. Me personally. If you don't like it like that, well, then don't do it in your shop like that. I'll do in my shop how I like to do, and you can do in your shop how you like to do. And neither of us are wrong. But yeah, it was a nice knife. Nice, thick spine. I'm really happy with it. Yeah, just working into the night, getting it sanded. Normally this would not have been etched. People ask if they would have etched in period. No, they would not have. But usually with a good enough finish, you can kind of see the pattern already. Even in a like a quote unquote historical mono steel, you can still see the variation in it, just like you would with a wrought iron. And as this patinas, or you get more basic acids or bases on it, you'll be able to see that pattern much more visible. I love the way Bloomsteel patinas, like cut into fruits and vegetables and just kind of rub the goo all over it. It's absolutely gorgeous. It gets a gray texture all over everything. It's spectacular. In the world of stainless steel, it's something that's definitely missing. I went ahead and oil quenched this blade. I did do a small test of a heat treat, and with water quenching, it cracked. So it does have a very high carbon content. So I went ahead and did an oil quench like I would with a modern steel blade, just for safety. I sacrificed a little bit of hardness to make sure the blade survived. You can see the springiness of the steel. Well, now that being said, yes, it's sharp. Yes, it's springy. Yes, it's good. But here is something that is just true. There is no historical steel that could even hold a glimmer of hope to survive against any modern steel. Even your overly mythical Ulfberts and your Woots and your Crucible steels, none of them. Not a single one of them. And that's one of those things, anybody who says they do is a liar. They're either a liar or they're ignorant. Those are the only two options. Now it's time to design the handle and see how I want this to look. I often am very uncomfortable with the representation of Germanic blades. Everybody focuses so much on the weaponry of kings and earls and these high-ranking warriors. But what about the regular people? What about the people who had to fight? They didn't have the money to flee country if things went wrong. The people who had to fight for their farms, for their families. This blade, I'm designing it to be someone definitely above, your basic level citizen. This person is rich enough to have a weapon that is dedicated strictly to warfare, because this knife doesn't have much more of a purpose outside of warfare. Most people had, a spear or an axe. Spear can be good for hunting. A knife like this, you're not going to want that close something to take it down with a blade. So this is someone who is a good enough fighter who has won, some renown, and so he has enough money to have a dedicated war blade that would be on his belt in case the pole axe or anything like that did not pan out. And it would have been his saving grace. I often so wonder about these people, the ones who are lost, nameless to the pages of history. We always focus so much on the king, but it's rarely the king who's out in front. now let's make the fittings, and let's use some of this steel, plus I got some extras. Whenever you get little chunks like this, if you ever do this on your own, just hammer them down flat. Just hammer it flat, and you don't have to bind them. Just hammer it flat, stack them up, and just be very careful with your tongs. Once you get to forge welding heat, just keep the stack together, put it on the anvil, give it a good solid whack in the middle, and then you can work around from there. You can see just how much good usable steel is there. So this is all forge welded, and I added it to some other pieces that I already had just so I could have enough. This is just kind of like my scrap bar. I keep adding to it just from all the excess chunks that I've had. I still have it to this day. It's something that's actually really special to me whenever I make a fitting from this, because it gets folded so many times, and inside of there is just a piece. There's always going to be a piece of the steel from before. So it's just like, it's a metallurgical record of all the times I've made steel, all of the thousands and thousands of pounds of steel I made. I made a lot of steel in my life. It's really where my passion is, in making steel, is in doing historical blades. Unfortunately, it's very expensive, material and time-wise, for me to do so. I can do as often as I want. If you were to ask me to make, let's make a Bloomsteel sword, well, I could, but you're looking at like a minimum, like starting out at about $5,000. It's it is not a fast process or a cheap process. What I really want to do is sort of like a skills challenge, just to really push myself. I want to start with no tools whatsoever, just my stream. I can tell what rocks have iron in them. I want to just build a clay smelter. I want to make some stone tools and chop up some wood and fire the smelter, and then I want to make a blob of iron. I want to use a big rock and I want to hammer that into a hammer, and then I want to do it again and make a pair of tongs, and then I want to do it again and make an axe so I can chop down all the wood I would need to make the charcoal to make the steel.
Give me a second.
And then use that to make an anvil, then like a little stump anvil, and then keep going. And I want to make, an awesome, I want to get enough that I can separate out from my high carbon steels, my low carbon steels. And I want to make, a nice big pattern welded Seax. Oh, but the amount of time, that would probably be 6 months to a year. Despite what the internet says, I do not make much money off of YouTube. I don't know how I can afford to take the time to do that. That's one of the big holdups with the longship. Boats are expensive. they're very, very, very expensive. The next part of longship build, I've got some of it filmed, and I'm forging all of the rivets for it. Wow. I'm already a few $1,000s into forging the rivets. I got a few $1,000s more to go, and I just, that's time that I'm not earning, and it's just, feel like, hey, when you get back on this project, like, I have to afford to get back on this project. A lot of us are not exactly doing the absolute best. I'm okay, but I am not a pleasure project funded right now. But we'll see, maybe I can get those two squared away. And if you've made it this far in the video, in your comment, be sure to type the word Bloom, B-L-O-O-M, at the beginning of your comment, and I'll respond to it ahead of anybody else that like to reward people who stick around and pay attention and interact. If you could also tell me if you don't mind the narration. I know a lot of people say it gets in the way of the flow of the video, but I think on videos like this, which are, compilations, they explain the process in my compilations as opposed to just my regular features, it is okay. And just let me know if you agree or not. The handle for this is going to be a leather wrapped handle made from a solid piece or two pieces put together, attached with hide glue, pitch, or cheese glue. I've heard about cheese glue. I researched it. I went down a cheese glue rabbit hole. I researched the weirdest things sometimes, but no, it was actually pretty cool. But yeah, you make it a little skinnier than your fittings, and so that way whenever you wrap your leather over it, everything's nice and flush. I know everybody always screams cross guard, cross guard. It doesn't need a cross guard. Very, very few, like next to no blades, next to no knives in the archaeological record, had cross guards. And why? Because you don't need them. I can all I'm a trained sword fighter. I've done full contact sword fighting. Your hands don't slide up the blade, even on a very hard thrust. I mean, hard. Make a dummy one. Try it. Unless you have the grip of a 4-year-old girl, it's not gonna go anywhere. They're like, oh, what happens if it gets, blood on it? That just shows me you've never been anywhere near a fight, or you've lived this very delicate pansy life where you've never even cut yourself. Blood is sticky, okay? So I'm like, if anything, please. That's just adding extra stuff. The crossguard on a sword is stop a sword from coming down, not from your hand going up. Again, that's just one of those non-debatable things because it's the truth. You don't need it on a knife. And if you're the kind of person, it's like I can always tell people who actually don't use knives in their day-to-day life, who have had very easy, lives, and they cosplay this, hard-working knife know-it-all. You don't need a crossguard. Now, like I said, the majority of blades throughout all of time never had one. Just like the majority of blades weren't full tang, but I'll get into that rant I'll save that rant for another video. At this point, I am just kind of done, ready to get this blade finished. We'll throw it on the belt sander. The leather risers are there just to add for grip and to make things just kind of a little more comfortable in the hand. And that's it. This is what most weapons from the Germanic tribes looked like. Before the Romans, during the Romans, after the Romans, up until around 1100. I'd say about the end of this style of knife. Yeah. It's perfect. Most people don't want it because it's simple, but that's why I love it.